as opposed to Saskatchewan. He graduated from UC Davis and was in private dairy practice and beef practice for about 14 years. It's true what I'm saying, Goat. He's currently professor of large animal medicine and welfare. He's served on, let's try this again, Lena. He served as the chair of both the AVMA and the AABP, and for those of you who don't know, AABP is Bovine Practitioners Animal Welfare Committees, and is currently a member of the California VMA Animal Welfare Committee. He was a founding board member of the Professional Animal Auditor Certification Organization, PACO, and is a member of the Scientific Committee for Validus. He received AVMA's Animal Welfare Award in 2007 and is a founding member of the American College of Animal Welfare, one of 2 bovine practitioners in that college. And Jim and I spent about 4 hours yesterday until they turned the lights off in the Kellogg Center, suggesting we should leave. Had a great talk, and I expect this will be a fabulous presentation. Welcome, Jim.
See if I get this right. That sounds about right, I think. Well, thank you, Lana. I feel like starting by saying I'm Jim and I was a first-year veterinary student. So there is life after veterinary school. And I think we're going to play off of what happened this morning pretty well, I hope. So if you have discussions, challenges, if something makes you gasp, go ahead. I'll do it this way. First, a little reminder of what welfare is. We have longer versions of what welfare is, but I'm going to go to the quick version because what I want to talk about is how do we decide what the welfare of the animals have? Who decides what welfare the animals actually have? Welfare is something the animals have. It's a state of being. It's not something we give to them. Things we do to them certainly affect the welfare. It is all about sentience, and we'll see how this works. Dr. Duncan's lecture or discussion this morning on sentience was perfect. Bernie Rollins, a welfare philosopher essentially from Colorado, ties into Aristotle's concept of telos, the essence of being. And in the case of welfare, we also talk about, in a general term, we want animals to have a life worth living. A more detailed description of what welfare is, this is from, it's kind of a slightly older version of the AVMA definition of animal welfare. It's less wordy than the newer version, I think, and easier to find on the website. But it's got more words. It's a committee event, but it talks about welfare is how an animal copes with the conditions it's in. Well, thank you. Talks about the things that we do as veterinarians and that you're learning about in veterinary school: pain, diseases, the typical things we do. And it relates to the state of the animal and the physical and mental needs. And that's what welfare is about. Are they actually happy? Are they calm and comfortable? Are they distressed or not? And I've been doing this for a long time, not as long as Dr. Duncan, but long enough to get white hair. And we have done a couple of things that I don't think serve the interest of the animals well in the case of animal welfare. We first allowed welfare to be separated from the concept of medicine, as though it was a separate entity, and it is not. It is part of medicine. It is an integral part of medicine. If you're learning about medicine, how can you not understand the behavioral and welfare needs of the animal? Because you can't separate the two. And it's not hard. You can just sum it up if you really wanted to. If you're stuck on a farm or in a kennel somewhere and you don't know what to do about the welfare of the animals, you can always just say, do what's right for the animal in front of you. And when we go through this, we'll see how that plays out. In the case of farm animal welfare, which is where I come from, so most of these slides are going to be, the examples are going to be livestock and principally dairy cattle. We'll see that what veterinarians should be doing on farms is creating welfare programs, just like we have every other program. When I got out of school, dairies did not have mastitis programs. We created mastitis programs. We created calf raising programs. We created reproductive programs, and that one kind of has a life of its own nowadays. But we created all these programs to do what? Prevent the problems. And then if there was the problem, find them and do something about it. So prevent mastitis, create a system to capture the failures in our prevention system and then do something about it. Prevent welfare problems, create a system to capture the failures in the system if there is a welfare problem, and do something about it. And that's the essence of a program. We can assess animal welfare. People want to debate this all the time, but we're very good at it. We can actually determine if an animal has acceptable welfare to our standards today, contemporary standards. We're not going to blow away or anything, are we? Okay, good. Okay, I'm good. Okay, so we can assess whether an animal or a group of animals has acceptable welfare. What we have in medicine and what veterinary school is all about is learning how to differentiate between healthy animals and sick animals. You're learning everything about how to figure out if this animal is healthy or this group is healthy and it's sick. We can do the same thing with welfare. Are the animals in good welfare, or are they compromised? What we don't have is a similar term to sick. We have compromised welfare. And the problem arises in the discussion of animal welfare is when we say there's a welfare problem, it becomes all or nothing. It becomes black and white. When we say an animal is sick, we inherently know that the animal could be a little sick. It could be a lot sick. It could be disastrously sick. We may need to rush it into ICU and do something right now. Or we may just say, keep an eye on it and see if it starts eating tomorrow. And welfare is like that. There are gradations of welfare issues and welfare problems. Some are outright abuse that must be taken care of right now. And some are, we can get to that later. Next summer we can fix that. They're okay right now. And for everybody, everybody here should by now have seen the 5 freedoms. 5 freedoms become fashionable and unfashionable in the discussion of welfare, like everything else we talk about. The 5 freedoms are essentially how we do a welfare assessment or an audit. When we do a physical exam on an animal, what are we doing? We're doing a systematic examination of different organ systems. Why do we do that? Why do we do that? My students always reply to see about the hydration status. Kind of, but we're really looking at the cardiovascular system. We auscultate the heart and the lungs. We do exams on the different organ systems on an animal, and if they seem normal to us, we move on. If they seem like they're not normal, if we have a clinical impression there's a welfare problem, we stop. The heart sounds funny. The lungs sound harsh. I'd better do some more tests. I might want an x-ray. I might want a CBC. I might do some more tests. I'll chase this down. If these become the organ systems on a welfare examination, do they have these things? Do they have, and I have this slide behind me a lot, and I can't ever remember the order of these things, or even how, I have to look at it to see what they are. I'm terrible at memorizing things. Do they have feed and water? Because if something doesn't, that's a medical problem and a welfare problem. Why do calves get sick and die? It's simply because we starve them to death, and then they get sick. It lowers the infectious dose. We don't keep them clean. That increases the pathogen load. Both a welfare issue, they need feed and they need clean bedding and sanitary environments, and a medical issue. Turns out in veterinary school we get really good at number 3. And then we're doing cows, if you're really into it, we'll get pretty good at number 2. But what we've not been good at is what Dr. Duncan talked about, is 4 and 5. We're not particularly good at those because those have bothered us or frightened us or caused cognitive dissonance. We are challenged often because we have not, in many cases, and particularly in livestock production, attended to the behaviors or the emotions of the animals. We balance what the animals need for welfare or even health with what we want from them. We confine them because we want certain things. We want food from them. We had various types of food from livestock this afternoon for lunch. We get work out of them sometimes if you're in certain places. Companionship, certainly entertainment. For that, we balance their welfare. We are willing to give them the welfare we want them to have for the things that we want from them. How much welfare do the pigs in gestation stalls have? They have none. They have no welfare. This is a zero across the board on the 5 freedoms. This is zero on the nutrition even. As Dr. Duncan said, historically, they're put in those things because if you let them go on group pens and eat out of common mangers, they get too fat. Because we selected sows to give piglets that ate a lot so they grow fast. They don't grow fast magically, the piglets. They grow fast because we select them to eat a lot. And that's what happens. That's why the pigs are essentially in those stalls. And then there becomes a lot of rationalizations. It's easier and things like that. How about the calf, calf roping thing down there, rodeo? Who does rodeo? It's okay, I'm not going to pick on you. Rodeo is a tradition in America and parts of Canada, especially the western states where I come from. What kind of welfare does that calf have? Chased by somebody, a rope thrown around his neck, dragged, jerked to the ground and tied up. Why do we do that? Why do we tolerate it? Because people enjoy watching it. It's entertainment. The calf gets the welfare that we allow it to. Who decides this? Because somebody makes money. How much would anybody be willing to pay if the calf wasn't afraid for its life? If it just stood there and the cowboy just threw a rope around its neck? There would be no value in that. There would be no entertainment in that, but that would be good welfare if nobody chased the calf. The calf only runs because it's afraid. What really comes on in discussion of welfare is a discussion of cognitive dissonance. When we know, we all have personal ethics, personal beliefs, opinions. When we are confronted with something that challenges our belief or opinion or ethics, we have to fix it. And if I go to a cowboy on the rodeo circuit and say, you know, you're really hurting those calves, what are they going to say? They're not going to say, oh, well, thank you for pointing that out. I'll become a bull rider because, you know, that's probably okay, as far as I know. No, they're going to do what? They're going to shoot the messenger in an essence, but they're going to fix the cognitive dissonance because none of us can accept the fact we've been doing something wrong for a long time. And the way to fix that, the simplest, is to discredit the concept. And then create, there's actually a really good piece of research, a research paper from New Zealand on why dairy farmers don't respond to our suggestions. It's not because they're stupid or dumb, it's because we present cognitive dissonance and then they rationalize a list of reasons why what we're saying can't work and why it will never work. We'll drive them out of business and a whole litany of things. It's actually a process. And then we get to where we need to. And that's the same thing happened when we did mastitis control programs. They didn't want to get rid of Staph aureus. But now a dairy only has Staph aureus mastitis if they want to. It's a complete management choice. It's completely controllable. Same with Staph aureus, strep ag, mycoplasma. All of the mastitises are completely controllable. They're management decisions at this point, and so is welfare. The cognitive dissonance is actually what philosophers have been talking about all the time, since before Aristotle. It's the concept of the way we are versus the way we ought to be. It's what people talk about in church on Sunday. What we do and what we ought to do. Constant discussion. And the ones that clearly challenge consumers or people in the country are battery cages, gestation stalls, and traditional veal housing. Those housing systems and management systems confront people's ethics about how we treat animals. The only people not bothered by that are the people who have those housing systems. So, I'm putting forward that welfare is a consensus of several things. It's a consensus of personal and societal ethics, science, which includes medicine, and personal belief or opinion and economics. So it goes back to the animals have the welfare we allow them, we want them to have. Because the natural setting and the three intersecting circle concept, the natural setting is actually what is best for animals if we didn't bother them. There is a confounder in the discussion. If we domesticate the animals, they are no longer natural animals. So we have to be careful about interpreting that, of course. But we put them in these situations. What kind of welfare do those chickens in a battery cage have? None. There's no welfare for those chickens. Battery cages turn soybeans and corn into eggs magically. Magically. It's an almost one-to-one trade-off. It's 1.2 pounds of corn and soybeans to 1 pound of broiler chickens, and almost the same for eggs. So this is magical at getting what we want from the animals. It's really bad for the chicken. There is a concept that I want to put up there that's coming forward in the world of ethics and philosophy, put forward by this fellow, Michael Sandel. Sandel is from Columbia University, and he has a slim book that's kind of interesting. That tells, his thesis is, we've moved from a market economy to a market society without discussion. We are so enamored in the United States with the idea that we are free market adherents that we think we should extend that to everything. If people want eggs from chickens that have more room, then they can buy those eggs. If people want pork from pigs that are not raised, or the sows are not in gestation stalls, then they can buy those things. They can pay more if it costs more. It actually turns out it doesn't actually cost more to do it this way, to change that. And that's an attractive, to an American, a very attractive idea of how to do our ethics. And it turns out that's how we do most of our ethics by default. We never actually had a national discussion on this. We just do it. What's the problem with it? So we let people who have some extra money buy the eggs and the pork, and my mind gets salved. But what about the pigs that are still in the gestation stalls? It's not fair, and fair is a serious ethical concept, especially in the American psyche. Fairness is inherent in our being of an American. And like I said, we can do anything we want to the animals. We own them, they're property. We choose to limit what we do and only allow certain things, and that changes over time, and that tends to bother people in the discussion of welfare. The way we interact with medicine, we provide medicine, has changed over time. We are better at it, hopefully, than we were 50 years ago, or 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. In this country, we have, in the late 1700s, decided to do something that was fairly radically different after the Enlightenment. We decided we would not have our ethics decided and our rules and regulations decided by monarchy or by a church or theism. We decided we'd do it ourselves, that we would collectively discuss things in some fashion, and we would arrive at a consensus, and through a governing democracy of people, we would govern ourselves and set our own rules. We would not have single source sets of rules, and that's what causes some conflict. Not all of us have the same opinions or ethics. So ethics determines what is acceptable in our society, and it does change over time. Clearly, and what's playing out in animal welfare is playing out towards an end game right now in gay marriage. Not long ago, when I was in public school, if one of our teachers was openly gay, they would have been fired. That was against the law to be an openly gay person and teach students in public schools in California. How silly was that? You know, you don't want pedophiles teaching students, but that's for sure. But adults can do what they want, right? So things change. Societal ethics change with the understanding of the issues. And then these changes happen by education and politics. So education is what's happening now, and politics is how we're going to play out. And in America, we tend currently to have a really bad view of politics. We've allowed the word politics to become taken, and politics is how we interact. It's just simply defined as human interaction. Personal politics, one-on-one, groups, or state or national politics. There is no other way we can actually arrive at a consensus. For instance, about what we can do, until 1963, I found this interesting. Cockfighting was illegal in Oklahoma. And then somebody who must have been fighting cocks for gambling decided that they didn't want to be charged with a crime and went to court. And a judge decided that it's not illegal to fight cocks in 1963. And so it wasn't until about 5 years ago that it became unlegal again to do that. So are we going to look to the courts